The massive doors of the Galactic Central Academy slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sight that made several alien students freeze in their tracks. Standing in the doorway was a creature that most of them had only seen in historical documents or safety briefings. A human. Alex stood there for a moment, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying not to smile at the various reactions around him. Some of the smaller creatures actually darted behind their taller classmates, while others extended various sensory organs to get a better look at him. The human had known this wouldn't be easy, but being the first of his kind to attend the academy was an honor he couldn't pass up. "You must be the new student," came a melodious voice from his right. Alex turned to see a tall, willowy figure floating slightly above the ground. The being's transparent skin showed swirling patterns of light beneath its surface, a Mark III classified species, if Alex remembered his xenobiology correctly. "I am Professor Gray. Welcome to Advanced Xenobiological Studies." Alex nodded politely, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He'd been briefed about how sudden movements could startle some species. "Thank you, Professor. I'm looking forward to learning here." The professor gestured toward the classroom with one of their 4 upper appendages. "Please, join your classmates. We were just about to begin." As Alex walked into the room, he could hear the whispers, or rather, the various forms of communication his universal translator interpreted as whispers. The classroom itself was a marvel of alien architecture, with seats designed to accommodate everything from gaseous beings to silicon-based life forms. "Is that really a Deathworlder? Look at the dense muscle structure. I heard they can survive multiple organ failures. Sha, they can hear far better than we can." Alex found an empty seat designed for bipedal species and sat down, trying to ignore the way the nearest students shifted their seating units a few inches away. Their reactions weren't surprising. Earth was classified as a death world for good reason, and its inhabitants had a reputation that preceded them. Professor Gray floated to the front of the classroom, their bioluminescent patterns shifting to attract attention. "Today, we begin our study of defensive evolutionary adaptations across different planetary classifications, and it seems we have a unique opportunity with our new student joining us from." They paused, their patterns flickering with what Alex's cultural training suggested was academic excitement. "Earth." The whole class turned to stare at Alex again. He could see their various environmental suits, protective membranes, and atmospheric processors working overtime, probably responding to their owners' stress levels. "Now then," Professor Gray continued, their transparency showing complex thought patterns swirling through their system. "Let's begin with a simple assignment. Each of you will document your species' natural defense mechanisms for next week's class. This will give us a practical foundation for understanding evolutionary responses to different environmental pressures." Alex pulled out his data pad and started taking notes, already thinking about how to approach this assignment. Around him, he could sense the excitement from his classmates. Many of them belonged to species known for their impressive defensive capabilities, from chemical sprays to electromagnetic pulses. Little did they know that human defensive capabilities would soon challenge everything they thought they knew about survival adaptations. Alex smiled slightly as he continued his notes, remembering the look on his own xenobiology teacher's face back on Earth when they'd first learned about humanity's unique place in the galactic ecosystem. As the class continued, Professor Gray's patterns occasionally shifted toward Alex with what seemed like curiosity. The human paid careful attention, knowing that this simple homework assignment might just change how the entire academy viewed his species. After all, sometimes the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were the ones that didn't look dangerous at all. Back in his assigned dormitory pod, Alex sat at his reinforced desk, staring at his datapad. The homework assignment seemed simple enough on the surface. Document his species' natural defense mechanisms. But as he began his research, he realized this might be more interesting than he'd first thought. Around him, through the transparent walls of his pod, he could see his fellow students working on their own assignments. In the pod to his left, A crystalline being named Spark was practicing its defensive light show, sending beautiful but potentially blinding patterns across its faceted surface. To his right, a gaseous student called Mist was documenting its ability to change colors to match any atmosphere. Natural defense mechanisms, Alex muttered, pulling up the human biological database. He started making a list, and as it grew longer and longer, his eyes widened with each new entry. His datapad pinged with a message from one of his classmates, Blue, a liquid-based life form who had been brave enough to talk to him after class. "Hey, Earth student, want to share progress? My defense is acid generation." Alex smiled and typed back, "Still working on my list. It's getting interesting. How many defenses do Deathworlders have?" Blue's message showed curiosity icons. "I'm starting to lose count," Alex replied honestly. He turned back to his research. The basic stuff was obvious: adrenaline response, heightened reflexes, increased strength under stress. But as he dug deeper, Alex found himself looking at human capabilities with new eyes. Things he'd taken for granted suddenly seemed remarkable in the galactic context. His research was interrupted by commotion in the corridor. A group of students were gathered around Glimmer, a bioluminescent species, who was practicing their presentation. Glimmer's entire body lit up in patterns designed to confuse predator species, and the other students made appreciative sounds through their various communication methods. "That's impressive," Alex thought, making notes about how most galactic species had one or two major defense mechanisms. Humans, on the other hand, he pulled up more files. Enhanced healing capabilities compared to most species. Temperature regulation through sweating, apparently rare in the galaxy. Pain tolerance that would be considered extreme by most standards. The ability to regrow certain tissues. Stamina that could outlast almost any known predator. "This can't be right," he muttered, double-checking his sources. But it was all there. What seemed normal on Earth was apparently extraordinary by galactic standards. A soft chime indicated another message, this time from Professor Gray. "How is your research progressing, Earth student? Do you require any assistance accessing the xenobiology databases?" Alex typed back carefully. "Thank you, Professor. I have access to everything I need. Just discovering some surprising things about human capabilities." The professor's response showed indicators of academic interest. "Excellent. I look forward to your presentation." As night cycle approached in the academy, Alex found himself still adding to his list. He'd started organizing it into categories: immediate defensive responses, long-term survival mechanisms, adaptation capabilities, and recovery abilities. Each category could probably fill a whole presentation by itself. In the pod next door, Spark had finished practicing their light show and dimmed to their rest state. Mist had consolidated into their resting form. But Alex kept working, his excitement growing with each new addition to his research. He thought about his classmates' reactions to his mere presence. If they were nervous around him now, how would they react when they learned what humans were really capable of? Not just the obvious physical traits they could see, but all the hidden capabilities that made humanity one of the most resilient species in known space. As he finally prepared for sleep, Alex couldn't help but smile. This simple homework assignment was about to teach his classmates why Earth was classified as a death world, and why its inhabitants were so remarkably suited to survive there. The next few days at the Galactic Central Academy found Alex spending every spare moment in the xenobiology research lab. He had special permission to use the reinforced equipment section, which was normally reserved for studying high-gravity species. The more he researched, the more fascinated he became with human capabilities. "You're still here." Blue flowed into the lab, their liquid form rippling with curiosity patterns. "You've been studying nonstop. Is human research always this intense?" Alex looked up from his datapad, where he was reviewing human endurance records. "Humans tend to get focused on things that interest them. We call it hyperfixation. Another survival trait, actually." Blue formed a question mark shape, Everything about humans seems to connect to survival somehow. That's what I'm discovering, Alex replied, pulling up a holographic display of the human nervous system. Look at this, our pain response system. Most species try to avoid pain entirely, right? Blue rippled in agreement. Pain is a warning to stop. All species know this. Alex grinned. Not humans. We can choose to ignore it. The liquid alien surface showed shock patterns. Ignore? Pain. That's impossible. Watch this, Alex said, pulling up historical footage. This is from old Earth records. A human running what we call a marathon. A long-distance race. See how they're clearly in pain but keep going. Some even smile while doing it. Blue's form wavered in disbelief. But why? Because we can, Alex said simply. Our bodies release chemicals called endorphins during physical stress. They help us push through pain. We even sometimes get what we call a runner's high, a feeling of pleasure from extreme exertion. He switched to another display, this one showing human cellular structure. And look at this, our healing factor. We can repair bone breaks, regenerate liver tissue, heal from most wounds given enough time. Some species can regrow limbs, sure, but our general healing capability is pretty unique. Blue moved closer to the display, their form showing intense interest patterns. Is this why Earth is classified as a death world? Alex shook his head. It's the other way around. Earth is a death world because it's incredibly dangerous. We evolved these abilities because we had to survive there. He pulled up more data. Temperature regulation through sweating, allowing us to stay cool during extended physical activity. Adrenaline response that can temporarily give us enhanced strength and speed. The ability to enter a flow state where time seems to slow down during intense situations. Highly developed problem-solving abilities that activate under stress. Stop. Blue rippled anxiously. You're saying humans have all of these defenses, not just one or two. Alex nodded. Plus more I'm still documenting. Like our social structures as a defense mechanism, humans instinctively form groups for protection, or our ability to throw objects with deadly accuracy. Most species can't do that. The lab's door opened, and Professor Gray floated in, their transparent form showing patterns of academic interest. I couldn't help but overhear. Are you suggesting, Earth student, that humans possess multiple redundant survival systems? Yes, Professor, Alex replied, pulling up more data. We're what you might call a generalist species. Instead of specializing in one type of defense, we developed many. It's like having backup systems for our backup systems. Professor Gray's pattern swirled with intense curiosity. Fascinating. And these abilities are common to all humans. With some variation, yes, Alex confirmed. We're all built this way. As he started organizing his research for the presentation, Alex noticed both Blue and Professor Gray studying him with new interest. He realized that until now, they'd just seen him as an unusual-looking student from a dangerous world. They hadn't understood that every human was essentially a walking survival toolkit, equipped with defensive capabilities that most species would consider extraordinary. And soon, the entire class would know too. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy as presentation day arrived. Alex sat in his reinforced chair, watching as his classmates took turns showing off their species' defensive capabilities. His datapad contained hours of research, carefully organized and ready to present, but his turn would be last. Spark went first, their crystalline form catching the room's light. My species developed light-based defense mechanisms, they announced proudly. Their body began to pulse with brilliant patterns, creating mesmerizing waves that could disorient predators. The class made appreciative sounds as Spark demonstrated how they could focus the light into brief, stunning flashes. Next came Mist, floating to the front in their gaseous form. We adapt to hostile environments by changing our chemical composition, they explained, shifting through various colors and densities. Any predator trying to consume us would find their respiratory systems temporarily disabled. Blue flowed up next, their liquid form rippling with excitement. As you can see, my species produces powerful acids when threatened. They demonstrated by creating a small bubble of acid that sizzled impressively when it touched the protective demonstration plate. This usually discourages most predators from attempting to consume us. Alex watched each presentation with genuine interest, noting how most species had evolved one primary defense mechanism and perhaps one or two minor ones. Each was impressive in its own way, but also very specialized. Professor Gray's patterns showed approval after each demonstration, their transparent forms swirling with academic satisfaction. Excellent examples of evolutionary adaptation. They commented after each presentation. As the presentations continued, Alex noticed something interesting. Many of his classmates' defensive abilities would be quite effective against humans, if humans were simple predators. The problem was, humans had evolved to overcome multiple types of threats, not just one or two. And now, Professor Gray announced, their patterns showing particular interest, we come to our final presenter. Earth student, please share with us the defensive capabilities of your species. The room grew unusually quiet. Alex could sense the mixture of curiosity and apprehension from his classmates as he walked to the front. Even the ambient atmospheric processors seemed to hum more softly. Before I begin, Alex said carefully, I want to thank everyone for their fascinating presentations. They've helped me understand something important about human defense mechanisms. Professor Gray's patterns swirled with curiosity. Oh, please elaborate. Well, Alex continued, setting up his presentation displays. I noticed that most species here evolved very effective specialized defenses, one or two really powerful adaptations that helped them survive. Several students showed signs of pride at this observation. Spark's crystalline form glowed slightly brighter. But humans, Alex paused, looking at his carefully prepared research, we took a different path. Instead of specializing, we generalized. And that's what makes us. He searched for the right word, interesting. Interesting. Blue rippled with curiosity. How so? Alex pulled up his first display, showing a basic human form. Let me show you. What you see on the outside is just the beginning. Every human walking around is actually carrying what we might call a survival Swiss Army knife, multiple tools and systems all working together. The room's atmosphere shifted as students leaned forward, or their species equivalent. Even Professor Gray floated closer, their transparent form showing intense academic interest. You see, Alex said, starting his presentation proper, humans don't just have one way to survive. We have many. And each one has a backup. And sometimes those backups have backups. He smiled slightly. In fact, some of our backup systems are considered impossible by galactic standards. The class watched in complete silence as Alex began to explain just what it meant to be a species that had evolved on a death world, and why humans were far more remarkable than anyone in the room had imagined. Alex took a deep breath and began his presentation. Let's start with something basic, our skeletal structure. He pulled up a detailed hologram of a human skeleton. Our bones aren't just support structures. They're living tissue that constantly rebuilds itself. Break a human bone, and it will heal, often stronger than before. A rustling of surprise moved through the classroom. Professor Gray's patterns showed intense focus. But that's just the beginning. Alex continued, switching displays. Our skin is actually a complex organ that does multiple jobs. It helps regulate our temperature, heals itself, and even hosts beneficial bacteria that help protect us. When we're hurt, it forms something we call scars, reinforced tissue that's often tougher than the original skin. Impossible, muttered one of the silicon-based students. No single organ could do all that. Alex smiled. Wait until you hear about our liver. It can regenerate from just 25% of its original mass. But let's move on to something more interesting. Our cardiovascular system. He brought up a new display showing the human heart and blood vessels. When humans face danger, we have something called an adrenaline response. Our heart rate increases, blood flow changes, and we can temporarily exceed our normal physical limits. We can lift heavier weights, run faster, and even ignore pain. Blue's liquid form showed ripples of disbelief. Ignore pain. But pain is a warning system. Exactly, Alex nodded. And humans can choose to override that warning system. We can keep fighting or running even with broken bones or severe injuries. We call it running on adrenaline. The classroom had gone completely still. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to be running quieter. Then there's our endurance, Alex continued, showing footage of human marathon runners. Humans are persistence predators. We can't run as fast as many animals, but we can run longer than almost any species on Earth. We regulate our temperature through sweating, which lets us cool down while still moving. Most prey animals have to stop to cool down. We don't. Professor Gray's patterns were swirling faster now. Are you suggesting humans can pursue prey until it simply collapses from exhaustion? Exactly, Professor. It's called persistence hunting, and it was one of our earliest hunting methods. Alex switched to his next display. But here's where it gets really interesting. All these physical abilities are backed up by our neural capabilities. He showed a scan of a human brain. Under threat, humans enter various enhanced mental states. We can experience time dilation, where everything seems to slow down, allowing faster reaction times. We can enter flow states where we perform complex tasks with incredible precision. Our brains release chemicals that can mask pain, increase strength, or sharpen focus, all automatically. Spark's crystalline form was vibrating with excitement or fear. It was hard to tell which. All humans can do this. All of us, Alex confirmed. And we can learn to control many of these responses through training. Some humans can consciously control their heart rate, body temperature, or pain response. We call it biofeedback. He looked around the silent classroom. But perhaps our most powerful survival trait is our adaptability. Humans can survive in almost any environment. Too cold. We build shelters and make fire. Too hot. We create cooling systems. Not enough oxygen. We make breathing apparatus. Any problem we face, we find a way to overcome it. Professor Gray floated closer, their patterns showing intense academic excitement. You're describing not just physical adaptations, but technological ones as well. Yes, Professor. Our intelligence and tool use are also survival traits. We don't just adapt over generations, we adapt immediately, using our minds to solve problems and our hands to create solutions. The silence in the classroom was absolute. Alex could see his classmates processing this information, realizing that they'd been sitting next to a species that was essentially a walking collection of survival systems, each one backing up the others, all working together to make humans one of the most resilient species in known space. The silence that followed Alex's presentation lasted exactly 3 seconds before the classroom erupted into chaos. Students were communicating in all their various ways: flashing lights, chemical signals, electromagnetic pulses, and vocal exclamations all mixing together until the universal translators struggled to keep up. But this changes everything about survival classification. Spark's crystalline form was literally glowing with excitement. How can one species have so many defensive systems? Professor Gray's patterns were swirling so fast, they almost looked solid. Earth student, Alex, I must ask, have you submitted this research to the Academy's Xenobiology department? No, Professor, Alex replied. This was just for the homework assignment. I thought everyone already knew about human capabilities. The professor's form rippled with academic excitement. New? No, most of these adaptations are documented separately, but no one has ever compiled them all together like this. The implications. Blue flowed closer to Alex's desk, their liquid form showing complex patterns of curiosity. Can you really ignore injuries that would incapacitate other species? Well, Alex said, pulling up another display, Let me tell you about something humans call the mother lift. There are documented cases of human parents lifting vehicles, machines weighing thousands of units, off their children in emergencies. The classroom erupted again. Professor Gray had to emit a calming harmonic to restore order. Impossible, called out one of the silicon-based students. The muscle density required. Adrenaline, Alex explained, combined with another chemical called cortisol and various other factors. Humans can temporarily exceed their normal physical limits in emergencies. We usually pay for it later with muscle damage. But in the moment is all that matters in survival, Professor Gray finished, their patterns showing deep understanding. This explains so much about human history and behavior patterns. The professor floated to the center of the room. Class, I believe we are witnessing something remarkable. The standard xenobiology texts may need significant revision. Earth being classified as a death world is not just about the planet's conditions. It's about what those conditions produced. Alex watched as several students began accessing the Academy's research databases, probably fact-checking his presentation. He could see the moment each of them found confirmation, their various forms showing shock or surprise. But if humans have all these capabilities, Mist spoke up from their gaseous form. Why don't they dominate the galaxy? Why are they so peaceful? Alex smiled. That's another survival trait, actually. Humans learned early that cooperation is often better than conflict. We're dangerous when we need to be, but we prefer to be friends. Professor Gray's patterns suddenly showed urgent academic purpose. Earth student, would you be willing to participate in a more detailed study? The Academy's Xenobiology department would benefit greatly from this information. Of course, Professor, Alex agreed. Though I should mention, I've only covered our basic survival traits. There's still a lot more to discuss about human capabilities. The classroom fell silent again. More. Blue's liquid form rippled with disbelief. There's more. Well, Alex said, pulling up yet another display, we haven't even talked about our psychological adaptations yet. Like how humans can form emotional bonds with almost any species, or how we use humor as a stress response, or our ability to find patterns in chaos. Professor Gray's patterns showed something Alex's translator interpreted as academic delight. I'm calling an emergency department meeting. This goes beyond a simple class presentation. Earth student, you may have just revolutionized our understanding of Deathworld species adaptation. As Alex watched his professor rapidly sending messages to other faculty members, he couldn't help but smile. He'd come to the Academy hoping to learn about other species, but instead, he'd help them learn something new about humans. And judging by the continuing excitement in the classroom, this was just the beginning. 1 month after his presentation, Alex found himself walking through very different halls at the Galactic Central Academy. Gone were the nervous glances and frightened reactions. Instead, students of various species now watched him with open curiosity and interest. Earth student. Blue called out, flowing quickly across the corridor to join him. Have you seen the latest Xenobiology journal? Professor Gray's paper about human adaptive capabilities is the most downloaded article in Academy history. Alex smiled, pulling up the article on his datavat. The title read, Comprehensive Analysis of Human Multi-System Survival Adaptations, Redefining Our Understanding of Deathworld Evolution. The best part, Blue continued, their liquid form showing excitement patterns, is how it's changing everything. 3 other departments have started new research projects about humans. The engineering department is especially interested in how humans create tools to enhance their natural capabilities. They arrived at the advanced xenobiology classroom, which now had twice as many students as before. After Alex's presentation, it had become the most popular class in the Academy. Professor Gray's patterns showed obvious pride as they floated at the front of the room. Today, the professor announced, we continue our expanded study of survival adaptations, with a special focus on how different species can learn from each other. Would our human student please share more about this fascinating concept called cross-training? Alex walked to the front of the room, noting how his classmates now leaned forward with interest rather than shrinking back in fear. Cross-training is how humans improve our natural capabilities, he explained. We study different methods of survival and combine them in new ways. Like how you study our light-based defense systems, Spark asked excitedly. I heard humans are developing new emergency signals based on our patterns. Exactly, Alex nodded. And we're learning about temperature regulation from our gaseous classmates, while sharing our endurance techniques with species that never considered long-term physical activity possible. Professor Gray's patterns showed academic satisfaction. This exchange of knowledge benefits everyone. The Academy Board has approved a new department specifically for studying cooperative survival strategies. The announcement caused excited murmurs throughout the classroom. Alex couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. What started as a simple homework assignment had evolved into something much bigger. But the most remarkable discovery, Professor Gray continued, isn't just about physical capabilities. It's about the human approach to survival itself, the ability to learn, adapt, and share knowledge. That might be the most powerful survival trait of all. After class, Alex walked with Blue and Spark toward the Academy's new Human Studies department, where he now worked as a research assistant. The halls were filled with students from all species, discussing and debating various aspects of survival adaptations. You know what's funny? Alex said to his friends. Back on Earth, we have stories about how humans seem weak compared to other species. We imagined aliens would be far more powerful and advanced. But it turns out every species has something unique to offer. That's very human of you. Blue rippled with amusement, always finding patterns and making connections. Indeed, Professor Gray's voice came from behind them, their form showing thoughtful patterns. Perhaps that is why Earth produces such remarkable students. On a death world, every lesson is about survival, even homework assignments. Alex laughed, remembering how nervous he'd been about that first presentation. Now, as he watched students of all species working together, learning from each other's strengths, he realized that his simple homework assignment had done more than just reveal human capabilities. It had helped build bridges between species, turning fear into fascination and transforming an entire academic institution's understanding of what it meant to survive and thrive in a dangerous universe. Not bad for a homework assignment from a Deathworld student.